Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are joining. Thank you for joining this webinar. This will be a quick 30 minutes webinar where we are going to talk to you about how XfilesPro can help you to integrate your Salesforce file storage with external storage. Particularly in this webinar, we are going to talk about SharePoint, right? So before we start, let me quickly introduce the panel. So myself, Rakesh. I head the sales division for Septet for products, and XfilesPro is one of the product what we have. So we have many other products as such, right? So along with me in this webinar, partnering me is Vedant. Vedant is our product consultant. Vedant, can you quickly introduce yourself?
Thank you, Rakesh. That was a wonderful introduction. Hey, everyone. This is Vedant. You can call me Ved. I work as a product consultant for the Scepters, and as Rakesh said, we have other products around data archiving and all, apart from XFiles Pro. So I hope everyone is doing all well so far. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining from. And I will hope you get a good, insightful session from this webinar. So now over to you, Rakesh, to get things rolling.
Yeah. Thanks, Vedant. Thanks for the quick introduction. Wonderful. Right. So thanks for joining again. So let me, before we move on, so let me give you give you the overview of what is this 30 minutes consists of. So what are the learning objectives? So before that, so some housekeeping. So where we would like to take all of your questions, maybe as much as possible. So while we are discussing on this topic, so wherever you feel that you have a question, so you can please drop in, and then we would like to take it at the end of the session. So we have a Q&A session for 5 minutes, depending on the time. So we will take as much as questions possible, right? And one more thing is that, so don't make any purchasing decision after seeing this webinar. Please consult us, talk to us, and understand how this is helpful for your particular use case, right? So once you understand, so then you can go about making a purchasing decision. So, right. So I hope this will be a great learning session for you. So let me start with learning objectives. So we have divided this presentation into multiple categories. The first thing is we want to talk about how external storage system can be your primary sales force file storage. What are the advantages of using external storage compared to using Salesforce file storage, right? And when we talk about external file storage, how can you use external file storage? So that's where comes XfilesPro. So what are the advantages? Why you need to choose XfilesPro only? So we will talk about that, right? And then so once once we understand what is XfilesPro and what are the capabilities of it, so we will talk about what are the different external storage options which XfilesPro offers. Then zooming into particularly SharePoint as an external storage. So what are the advantages? Again, here we talk about SharePoint specific related topics, right? And after all this, we will take you through the live demo where we will show you how XfilesPro is actually working. So we will show you how easy it is to set up, how you can configure any of your external storage. So those are the points which we will discuss. And then finally, so we will talk about few use cases. There are many, but we have chosen a few use cases which is really useful for our customers, right? So what we see generally, how a few of our customers have got benefited by using XfilesPro. So that's where the broadly how we have divided this 30-minute session into different topics, right? So now moving on to what are the advantages. So let's talk about advantages of using external storage to Salesforce file storage. So what we have seen is that so the Salesforce offers a lot of limitations when it comes to file storage, because you cannot keep the files organized within the Salesforce file storage system. So then what do you do? So you may have to depending on your requirement, you may have to keep the files in a different folder structure for a particular use case. So that is not possible because Salesforce doesn't have that capability, right? So this is one of the major challenges what we have seen from interacting with a lot of our customers, right? So the organizing the files, keeping that in a proper folder structure. This is a big challenge when you have many files to handle with, right? And one more major thing which we see from our customer is that a collaboration with external users, or it could be some of them who don't have a Salesforce licenses, or say not Salesforce users. So that's where we call it as external users. It could be our partners, customers, vendors, whoever it is. So how are you going to collaborate with them when you need to share those files which is residing within the Salesforce? How you can manage the collaboration part of it, right? And then when we talk about collaboration, we talked about external. So how about internal collaboration? Maybe you may have to share the same file with your internal teams, like it could be marketing, sales, product, or your finance. So how are you going to manage the entire collaboration part of it? So when it comes to file storage. And the one more major thing is that if you are using a third-party application, so where this third-party application is generating a lot of files, how are you going to manage it? So maybe one more case if I want to talk about is how are you going to manage if you have a community portal where your community users are uploading a lot of files? How are you going to manage the files which is coming in volume? So one of the ways is to keep adding whenever the file storage fills up, so you keep adding more and more storage. So, but if you look at it, that is not a sustainable model. So if that is not a sustainable model, so what else you have? The option is to move all the files from Salesforce file storage to any of your external storage of your choice, right? So broadly, if I want to categorize the main key takeaways from this webinar, also the pain point what we are going to solve is that, so how you can move the files to external storage and keep the folder in a proper structured way. How you can collaborate. So these are the challenges what we have seen. So how you can collaborate with your partners, customers, vendors, and internal teams. And if there are a large volume of files which is generated, how are you going to manage that many volume of files, right? So for all of these questions which you might have, the solution is XfilesPro, right? So let's talk about what are the advantages of XfilesPro. Why you need to choose XfilesPro or other file storage providers, right? So we have the XfilesPro as a product has 8 years of experience. That means we have been through many cycles where we understood a lot of cases, use cases from our customers, and it has gone through a cycle of improvement, right? So that is where we say that. So we have 250 plus Salesforce customers who are actively using XfilesPro, and we have expertise of 15 plus industries. And this product is vouched by 350,000 plus licensed users. So day in and day out. So these are the licensed users who are using our product to manage their files, right? So this is built specifically for Salesforce. That means anything which is particular to Salesforce, it could be Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, or you might have built some of your custom solutions. So the XfilesPro supports, right? And if you look at the ROI, so ROI could be direct benefit of cost savings, and second one is the performance improvement or process improvements, right? If you look at the cost savings, so we have seen that it helps you to save at least 70% cost in terms of savings, right? So that is a direct ROI to you. So the other ROI is you can keep the folders in a way you want to keep it. And manage the files externally, so without worrying about the Salesforce file storage, right? So how do you get ROI? When do I get ROI? So if that is a question you have, so you don't have to wait for 1 or 2 years to see how you're going to get the value out of this. This is immediate, I would say. So the day you implement XfilesPro and starts moving the files to any of your external storage, you start seeing the value of the product, right? And so we call this as advanced file management solution, or it has got advanced file management capabilities, because so when you integrate with XfilesPro with any external storage, it brings the capabilities of the external storage. So which is like you can handle large volume of files, you can integrate with multiple organizations, and you can use this as external storage as a central repository. So all these capabilities are utilized because you are moving the files to any of your external storage using XfilesPro, right? So one more advantage what we have is that, so maybe this is the only solution in the App Exchange what we see, that so we support multiple storages. So when it comes to multiple storages, let me go to next slide. So where what are the different storages we support? So we support 8 different storages. So it could be cloud or on premises. If I talk about cloud, so SharePoint, AWS, OneDrive, Google Drive, all these are different premier cloud service providers. So we have integrated with, and we support seamlessly with all these cloud service providers. Also, if you are planning to implement, or you have your own on-prem storage, so we can also support that as well. So this is from the storage point of view. So how about internally looking at Salesforce? As I told you, so this seamlessly works with Salesforce, like any of the standard or custom objects, or any type of users. It could be standard users or community users. So any type of users, it seamlessly works. So that means when you implement this solution, so your user experience is seamless. So that means there is no change in the experience of the users, right? So they will appreciate seeing it. So not only that, so because there is no change in the user experience, the cost saving is huge. So I think you'll all appreciate how it is doing its work without changing the user experience at the back end, right? So now, so this webinar, as we discussed, is particularly on SharePoint. So let's go to SharePoint. So what are the advantages of using SharePoint? SharePoint as an external storage. So you may be aware already that so SharePoint is one of the premium file management solution available in the market, right? So as we have some data, so there are 100 million plus users worldwide who are using SharePoint for to manage their files, right? So compared to Salesforce file storage, the cost of acquiring SharePoint is much lesser than adding more storage, Salesforce file storage. So, and then you also can cross platform collaboration, internal departmental collaboration, all those things can be done. So ultimately you can manage entire file storage within the SharePoint ecosystem. So how do you do it? Yeah, that is where XfilesPro comes into play. So the magic is done by XfilesPro, right? So XfilesPro, when you connect XfilesPro to an object in turn to your Salesforce file storage, whatever the files which comes into your file storage, it is moved to your external storage. In our case, we are talking to SharePoint, right? So, and then it leaves a link back to your Salesforce object, and the user can preview, view whatever he wants to do it within the Salesforce. They will not have any difference in their experience what they were having earlier. So all these things are done by XfilesPro. You can manage your files, you can keep the different folder hierarchies, however you want to configure it. So all those capabilities are there within the Salesforce, within the XfilesPro system, right? So now, with all this discussed, so I would now like Vedant to take a quick demo of the product and show you how it is working. And we will discuss on a few case studies as well. Over to you, Vedant.
All right, thank you, Rakesh. That was fantastic, and I think you guys could have got a good information on, what are the possibilities with SharePoint and why XfilesPro is the best application, and basically why you should use external storages instead of, using native Salesforce files in attachment. Now, I will be showing you a quick demo, as Rakesh said, which will give you a knowledge about features and how it works. And post that, we will talk about a few use cases, how the customers are using XfilesPro around the world. Now, starting, first thing I would want to talk to you guys about is the architecture diagram, and not much on that, but usually what happens is that you have your Salesforce standard and custom object. Now, XfilesPro has components where you upload the file. It's similar to your, notes and attachment components. XfilesPro has its own component. As soon as you attach the file goes and sits in SharePoint, and what you get back to Salesforce is just the dynamic link. Now, of course, as Rakesh mentioned, you can preview it, download it, delete it, and do a lot more apart from that. But that's, in a nutshell, what in the background happens. Now, as you know, XfilesPro support Amazon S3, Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, SharePoint, and the local ones. Now, the next what I want to talk to you guys about is the authentication for SharePoint and Salesforce. Now, we have something called multi-factor authentication for secure integration. So there's two levels of it. The first level is that an Azure admin creates an application in Azure and registers the Salesforce URL in the Azure app. Once it's successful, you get an access key, secret key, and a tenant ID. Once you feed in those keys, you validate, and finally you have to enter your SharePoint admin credentials. Now, what this does is that the app is in your control, SharePoint is of yours, and Salesforce is under your domain. So there's at no point any kind of file flowing through our system. It's completely under control. All the API calls is happening through your Azure to your SharePoint to Salesforce. Having said that, once you do all the authentication, you come to this configuration page. Now, this is the name of your SharePoint and Salesforce, which could be any name under the earth. Any name could be given. This is a root folder name. So as soon as you configure it, if you click on submit, it goes and creates a root folder under which you will have the object folder, record folder, and the files. That's a standard structure, but more on that later. But I just wanted to clear that what this thing does. Now, this is the root site name, which is your domain name. So when you feed in, you get all the sites which you have, and you can integrate any site by selecting it. Now, as you know, XfilesPro support any standard, any custom object. So in that case, you can select as many number of standard or custom object which you want to select. When you click on submit, the connection is being made. Now, I have already configured XfilesPro for case, order, and product. Now let's jump into the end user experience. Now, this is a case record, a case object under which we have a case record. Here's the case number, here's the case subject. Now, this is a standard case UI, right? You have attachments and all those things. Now, if I, remind you about XfilesPro, we have components, right? So we have a couple of components. So one is called list component, the other one is called the BySync component. The list component, now let me explain you, right? What are these components? You can use either of that, not both. Now, let's say as a customer, you have a use case where you want users to have the exact same experience what you have in native files and attachment, but you want the files to be actually stored in SharePoint. If that's the only requirement that you have, then we have this list component which fits perfectly for your use case, because you can upload the files, you can drag and drop here in bulk as well, as many as files you want to upload. It straight away goes and stores in SharePoint. But what you see here is the link of the file. When you click on this, you can preview it like this. The entire file is visible. This is a Word file, by the way, and you can preview it like this. Now, apart from that, you have an option of selecting it in multiple options and deleting it, downloading it. You can in fact add notes if you want to use a kind of tagging or adding notes. That's also a functionality here. So that's essentially what list component does. Now, let's say as a business, you want a lot more to do, right? You want a bit more collaboration. For example, you want to create folders, right? You want to upload from both the sides. For that, we have something called the BySync component. Now, everything what's supported in list component is the same here. You can upload the files in bulk, drag and drop here as well. You can preview it also, this file like this. One more option that you get of previewing the files in BySync component is, which is an alternate way of setting it up, is you click on this file, it opens up in a separate SharePoint window where you can start collaborating with just one go. You can enter a word and then it will just sync with the document in Salesforce. So that's an alternate option you have to view these files. Now, having said that, you have few more options with BySync where you can create folders. For example, I can create folders called email type 2. I already have email type 1. So let's say I create this folder called email type 2, which would be created in Salesforce and in turn would be created in SharePoint. This is just a folder link that you see here. Now, This is, and we also have, by the way, something called template. Let's say as soon as you create a new record, you want for your users to have default folders coming up all the time. For example, you want these two folders to be automatically created whenever you create a new record. In that case, template feature is what you will be looking for. And apart from that, all the other download, delete, everything you have. We have an additional button called Open SharePoint. As soon as you click on that, it takes you to the SharePoint window. And by the way, since we are here, this is how the magic happens in SharePoint. So magic is happening in Salesforce, but this is how it looks in SharePoint. So let me explain you. This is your SharePoint. This is your team site. This is your documents. This is your root folder, which is, as I mentioned, ultimate parent folder. This is your object folder, record case number. Basically, this is record ID and the files and the folders. Now, if you're thinking that, listen, I don't want this case ID, fine. We have an option of removing that as well. You can just remove the case ID through formula field. Also, if you're thinking, listen, we want more complex folder structure. For example, you want parent child. Let's say this emails message under this case. You also want to have related emails to this case under this case, object folder. Good news is all of that is possible. Any field can be used as a field name using formula field. So that basically suffices any kind of requirements that you have around folder structure. Now, one important thing which I wanted to, tell you in the beginning, but I thought let's keep it for the last is the BySync. The name BySync is given because you can upload from Salesforce, which definitely stores in SharePoint. You can also upload here, which will show up in Salesforce as well. So that's essentially, why we have given this beautiful component a name called BySync component. Now, much covered on this. The last thing I wanted to show you guys is that, let's say, you have some existing files which you would want to move to Salesforce. Now, a lot of our customers, they come for Salesforce XfilesPro a bit later of Salesforce integration. So obviously for 5 years, they have been using Salesforce. So they have a lot of files already. Now, what about that? So for that, we have an export feature, which is called a migration or archiving tool, whichever you want to call it. So you can select the provider, which object, type, and then give a filter criteria. And whichever meets that filter criteria, all of that files will be automatically exported to SharePoint in the right folder structure. Now, this finally brings us to the end of the demo, and I hope that I was able to give you a good gist of how XfilesPro works. Now it's time to get into a bit more on the use case side. Now you know how it works, right? You know different components, you know what it does. Now I'm going to cover a few use cases, which is pretty different from each other, but yet you will get a good idea on how the application fulfills everything. Start with, I have a customer who is a top logistics company who uses a third-party application. So basically, this company is using a third-party solution, which is an App Exchange solution, to generate a lot of files, right? So that's in turn generating a lot of files, and what happened is that their file storage reached surpassed 100% or reached 155%, which is a huge pain point if you are aware of how Salesforce 100% limitations are. So this customer wanted to upgrade their App Exchange solution that they were using, which was for logistics helping something. So they were not able to upgrade because they had no file storage. In fact, they had surpassed it long time. Now they came to us, and XfilesPro stepped in and reduced the storage from 155% to 36%. And then, in fact, the cost which they were paying to Salesforce and for file storage and was supposed to pay to Salesforce for file storage versus the cost they paid to us to reduce the file storage and to have the XfilesPro gave them a savings of 86%, which is huge if you put into perspective. And they were also able to upgrade their App Exchange application and use this new feature also. So it was a win-win situation for them as well as for us all the way. Next up, we have a top nonprofit US university who were using community users, community portal basically, and they had 1,000+ community users. Now let me explain what this customer did. So they basically had students coming from different courses to their community portal and uploading files. But that's just not it. The customer wanted students' courses to be reflected in SharePoint. As in, let's say they were from 2D, 3D, and digital cutting. Now, students belonging to 2D will be uploading the files which should go into 2D folder. Same with 3D, same with digital. So that's what they wanted, right? And that is very much possible based on the courses students belong to. The file should go into that, and that's very much possible using XfilesPro. Now, they were also looking to integrate with SharePoint. So all of this should happen in SharePoint. And that's exactly what we do. As you mentioned, Rakesh mentioned earlier that XfilesPro integrates with community licenses, community users pretty seamlessly. And apart from that, they also use customized folder structure to even segregate it further. In that way, they got a centralized file management system. They were able to reduce their cost by 80%, and they had a seamless collaboration with community users. The last, but definitely not the least, is the Fortune 500 media company who wanted to use SharePoint as a centralized document management system. Now, this particular firm, started with us for 4 orgs, where they had 2,000 plus users to start with, licensed users. Now, the idea or the roadmap was to implement this for 32 orgs, which is across the company. Now, before we started with them, they had an existing file management solution which they wanted to replace for a better, efficient, and a solution which gives them more ROI, and a solution which stores in SharePoint itself. And as we are the best application for SharePoint in the market right now, naturally we were their first choice. And when we collaborated with them, they were very happy with what we do. So basically, they had each org, and each org had its specific site they wanted to connect it with Salesforce. So in the nutshell, what they wanted is that user to remain in Salesforce, upload, access, download files from Salesforce, but the file actually physically will be present in SharePoint. That's exactly what our product does, right? And they also wanted, so obviously they were a Fortune 500 company, so they had a very complex org naturally, right? So they had a lot of parent-child, lookup, master detail relationships to the nth level, in fact, function objects as well to the nth level. That's where XfilesPro BySync was able to also inculcate the parent-child relationships. They were able to upload files, folders, and all those things. So just to give you guys an idea, if you have any that kind of use cases as well, XfilesPro can easily take care of that. Now, finally, the benefit that this customer got was able to use SharePoint as a centralized document management system, and the beauty of it was everything was managed from Salesforce. The storage cost reduction was 75%. When you think about the investment they would be doing for all the 32 orgs and the cost reduction percentage, it's a big deal, right? And then they were able to use customized folder structure as they had, as they wanted. Now, this brings me to the end of the webinar. To quickly summarize, we showed you the advantage of using external storage system and how XfilesPro helped companies to harness the power of SharePoint. We also saw a live working demo, and we also discussed a few amazing. I hope all the attendees had a wonderful and insightful time. And before we move into a final Q&A session, Rakesh, if your final words, because I believe we have a minute, or if we can get started with Q&A, let me know.
Right. Thank you, Vedant. Thanks for the insightful demo, as well as it was very, very knowledgeable in terms of understanding the capabilities of the product. I hope it is the same for the user as well, so for the attendees as well, right? So Q&A. So to start with, we have a lot of questions already. Yeah, so I am looking at few questions. Okay, so we have one question. We have lots of existing files in SharePoint, which we would like to link it with the right Salesforce records. Is there any way to do it? Yeah, Vedant, would you like to answer this?
Yes. Sorry, Lucas, can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we have a lot of existing files in SharePoint, which we would like to link it to the right Salesforce record. Is there any way to do it?
Yes. So basically, we have a very magic feature which is called syncing feature. So as soon as you move the files to the right folder structure in SharePoint, we can easily sync that within few seconds using the syncing feature. So yes, it's very much possible.
Thank you for that. Right. So quickly moving on, we have files automatically generated in notes and attachment. Can we automatically move it to SharePoint without manual intervention?
Yes, so XfilesPro has a trigger which can automatically move the files right away to an external storage. So as soon as the file is populated, it can be immediately moved to external storage using the trigger.
Right. Okay. So there's a quick question, quick and
So
simple,
Rakesh,
crisp question.
I have a very
Yeah.
interesting question, a couple of interesting questions as well I wanted to cover. So one of the joining attendees have asked that can we use SharePoint custom fields and metadata? So the good news is that in the new release that is coming up, I think by the end of this week or probably next week, we are supporting Salesforce SharePoint metadata feature itself. So you can showcase any SharePoint metadata within Salesforce component, like pricing component that we showed. So one of the questions that also came up, yes, one of the last question I would like to take. We have a lot of questions, so I'm sure I will get back to you guys over an email. That's my promise. But one last question I think I can take is it possible to store blank templates that can be opened and filled out from within Salesforce? So if I understand right, I believe yes, the templates can be blank. There does not need to be uh, any files inside it, and that should be fine. So I will anyway reach out to you guys with these answers. So if my answer is right, or if you meant something else, please let me know. Rakesh, do you have any further questions?
We have I picked up a couple of questions. We'll take last two questions. We
Sure.
have already overrun by 2 minutes. So one is on the pricing. So quickly, let me answer this. On the pricing part of it, so this is on a user-based model. So that means it is on per user per month model, and depending on the number of users which you are looking at, so this is priced, right? So and it starts from $0.99 per month per user. So when I say $0.99, so depending on the volume, so we can look at how we can price it. So for you to give a better ROI. And we also have orgoid model. So where if you are looking at 2000 or 2500 license, so we can look at orgoid model. So where you pay a fixed amount of price for the annual licensing, so that we can look at it, right? So hope if you have any questions, I think you can we will reach out to you. So we will also give you our email ID to you can write to sales at xfilespro.com, right? And one final question which I would like to take is, we have a use case where we need to keep the files for a specific time period and then move it out. Is this possible? So I think this looks very interesting. So Vedant,
Yes.
would you like to answer this?
Yes, that's an interesting question, and that's in line to what we have planned for you guys next. So I actually showed you guys the export feature, right? So we are coming up with an archiving feature also, which is a bit more enhanced export feature, which is, as I said, already almost out in next 2 days. So that feature will ensure that you can archive or migrate or export whatever you want to call files at a later stage, right? So that's again, as I said, that's a plan for our next webinar. So please drop us any queries on sales at XfilesPro, and also tune in for the next webinar, which will be, I'm sure, about the archiving scenarios itself.
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks, Vedant, for answering that question. So that's it for now. So we will announce the next webinar date on the file archiving. So please watch out for this space, and our team will reach out to you. And any further questions, any doubts you have, anything which you want to engage with us to understand your use cases, we are open for the discussion. So you will also receive the recording of this webinar. You can go through and let us know. So your feedback. Thanks for staying back and giving us your valuable time. This was wonderful interacting with you. So may not be on the voice, but definitely we got a lot of questions. We know that you are there through and through. So thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.